Well, for the first time, the top legal official in the U.S. has explained the rationale behind a controversial policy, killing American citizens overseas who are suspected of plotting attacks against the U.S. For more on this, it's back to Shihab in Washington. Shihab, what's all this about?
Well, it's quite a lot. There's quite a lot to be discussed, actually. Attorney General Eric Holder didn't directly refer to the killing of alleged al-Qaeda cleric Anwar al-Awlaki in Yemen 5 months ago, but he did outline a three-part test for determining when it's legal to kill a U.S. citizen extrajudicially. First, he said the U.S. government needs to determine that the person poses an imminent threat of violent attack against the U.S. Second, a strike is appropriate when capture is not feasible, but he also said the operation would be conducted in a manner consistent with the applicable laws of war. Let's get some analysis of these arguments. We're joined from New York by Shahid Buttar. He's the Executive Director of the Bill of Rights Defense Committee. He's also co-director of the Rule of Law Institute. If these criteria are met, then is the U.S. president legally allowed to order the killing of anyone, U.S. or not? Citizen, with U.S. or non-citizenship, yeah.
When we ask the question of what is legal, the question really becomes what can the government get away with? And the fact of the matter is that while complying with no constitutional limits on executive power and while running roughshod over the separation of powers that is deeply embedded in our constitutional norms, despite those very profound legal faults, the extrajudicial assassination authority remains in place. By an act of this administration, unsupported by an act of Congress, and in the face, quite frankly, of centuries of judicial precedent.
But the whole point about this speech was Eric Holder was saying he was going to argue that this was in keeping with precedent. So, I mean, help us be a bit more specific than about this argument. Does this make the legal case for extrajudicial killing?
I don't think that the Attorney General did. I think he tried. But one of the conspicuous omissions, and this is often true when you have executive officials speaking without taking comments from the audience. One of the conspicuous omissions from the Attorney General's comments related to the requirements of due process, which is a bedrock norm embedded in the Fifth Amendment to the Constitution. And he did speak in his speech at Northwestern Law School about the internal process that happens within the executive branch. But the fact of the matter is that we have courts in this country for a reason. And the reason is that the founders of our country, the framers of our Constitution, did not trust the executive branch. The entire Constitution, you might say, is a set of restrictions on executive power. And the test that the Attorney General set forth to supposedly constrain the use of this authority should not give anyone any comfort, because at the end of the day, there was no impartial check on this power, and checks and balances are crucial.
There was that sense he was defending contradictory ideas during his speech. On the one hand, he did make a very robust defense of the civilian judiciary. He said those who claim that our federal courts are incapable of handling terrorism cases are not registering a dissenting opinion. They are simply wrong. On the other hand, he then argued robustly for the need for military commissions, apparently when a judgment had already been made extrajudicially about someone's guilt.
I think that's right. There is a lot of, unfortunately, inconsistency pervading the Obama administration's approach to national security issues. The administration also made a big show when it entered office a few years ago about pledging the most transparent administration in U.S. history. We've seen anything but that. And in fact, I would say that on the transparency meter with respect to national security issues, this administration, quite frankly, ranks toward the bottom of American administrations. And I think that inability to reconcile the rhetoric with the reality is unfortunately a relatively consistent problem that this administration has developed.
Shahid Buttar, thank you very much. It was a fascinating speech. Actually, he also made the case that the U.S. had the legal authority to bomb anywhere the U.S. wanted to if it determined a nation was unable or unwilling to deal effectively with a threat to the U.S. We'll have to discuss that one sometime.